No worries.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Eliza from Ocean.io. I'm the product marketing specialist here. And this is my good friend, Nick. Nick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Nick Abraham. I'm the founder and CEO of Leadbird.io. We're a B2B lead generation agency, been in the space for about 3 to 4 years. And we're here to show you guys how to build your lead list properly and just kind of take you through the entire process from start to scratch.
Yeah, so to begin with, just a quick poll for you guys as we wait for more people to join on. But how often are you finding you're building lead lists and, are you enjoying it, or is it the pain that we're all kind of going through on the regular basis? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of speak on that too. I mean, so we've been in the space for about 3 to 4 years. We've used literally every tool under the market to build lead lists. And, that's the hardest part, building the lead list. If you can get your lead list to be good, it just makes everything easier, from doing your cold calls to doing your cold emails, your outreach in any way. And so, I've tried every process to get our lead list to be accurate. And I think we finally have nailed it down in the last 6 months. And I'm excited to kind of walk through that and kind of show it all the way through.
Yeah, it's looking like we have quite a lot of newbies on here. Never before have they built lead lists. So it's super exciting for you guys to find kind of like a shortcut or, the secret hidden gem of how we can really get your lead lists strong and, achieve that hyper growth that we all are aiming for. But Nick, should we get started? Do you think we should get started?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get
let's
started.
Kick it off.
Sweet. So I'll go ahead and start and kind of talk about just data in general, right? So there's tons of databases out there. There's everything from Apollo to Cognizant to ZoomInfo. There's hundreds of data products out there, and there's people that are entering the market today, right? And the thing about databases is that they're all basing their data off of Sales Navigator, and that's where the issue kind of starts. And so with Sales Navigator, you as a user could create a company page. Like I could go in and take my company page of Leadbird.io and go say that it's a manufacturing firm, right? Or, sometimes they don't have industry filters available for specifically what I am. So a great example is like an e-commerce brand. If you go into Sales Navigator, they don't have a lot of filters for let's say a fashion and apparel brand. I actually think they do have that one, but in some scenarios they don't have the exact filters, but they'll have something that's kind of relatively similar. So like a great example would be like SaaS companies, right? Like there's not a filter on Sales Navigator for SaaS, but there is one for computer software. But computer software could mean a whole bunch of different things. And so that's where kind of the issue starts. People just miscategorize or will choose something that's kind of similar to what they're at. And if all these databases are basing their data off of Sales Navigator, it kind of just trickles down. And so this is a common issue you'll see in pretty much every database that you use that uses like standard industry filters, is that, there's going to be a portion of the data that is just completely wrong. And if you just kind of think about it, it makes logical sense. Like, most contact databases have anywhere from 200 to 400 million contacts in it. And, that's just the contacts. So now let's think about, every data point that a database typically gives, from the email to their first name, their last name, to their phone number. Now you're multiplying all those data points against that 240 million. I don't do public math, but that's probably over 1 billion data points that are being uploaded into a database. And there's just no way for it to be 100% accurate, right? And so that's the main issue with databases. And it's tough, right? Because you never know if your data is good until you launch the campaign, right? Like you just have to trust the tool. And once you launch your campaign, you'll start to see that a lot of people say, hey, I have nothing to do with what you're trying to sell me, or hey, I'm not even XYZ, right? And so it just gets tough unless you use kind of what we're about to show you. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll kind of explain how we go about it. Sweet. So when we build lead lists, we build it in 2 fashions. So we like to build our list first by building a list of accounts. So the list of accounts is simply just the companies, right? And then once we identify and build our list of accounts, we'll then go in and try to identify the proper people that we need to be selling into, the contacts at those companies that we need to be selling into. And so, about 6 months ago, I actually found Ocean. I can't remember exactly how I found it. I think I got introduced to it. And it blew my mind. I think what Ocean's building with their lookalike search function is going to change the data space, and it's really going to be the future of data. I think a lot of other people are going to start to adopt this, and probably not get as great results as what Ocean can do right now, but it's actually game changer. So to kind of give everyone in here a quick idea of what the lookalike search function is, it's basically like using the industry filter on steroids. So basically, in most databases, like if you wanted to find an advertising agency, for example, you would go find the filter at marketing and advertising and select that to build your list of accounts. But with Ocean, what you can actually do is simply put a website URL of a company that you want to find other companies that are similar of, and it's going to build you that list. And so this is super powerful in like spaces that are relatively new. So like a great example that I put here is like crypto and Web3. That is relatively new. There's not that many databases that have, really there is no other database that has Web3 or crypto contacts as well as like accounts in it categorized, because they're not using real-time data like Ocean is. So in Ocean, I could literally go in and put in Coinbase, for example, and it will go find me every other crypto exchange that's out there. And the reason why this is so powerful is that it allows you to make your actual outreach, right? Because data is a very important piece, but the actual messaging, the copy that you're using to send messages out, like it can get so much more tailored, right? So an example I put out here is that like, everyone that's not really using Ocean is probably going to say like, hey, I saw that you were a marketing and advertising agency, right? And, like they probably get, 10 to 100 messages like that every single year. But what if I was able to send them a message and get very granular with the type of marketing and advertising agency that they were? So if I could send a message saying, hey, I saw that you are a TikTok ads agency, right? I'm getting a little bit more specific, and I'm able to do that with Ocean because I could put in a TikTok ad agency's website in and find hundreds of other TikTok ads agencies. And so the second approach of being able to write better copy is just going to lead to better results, which is, more demos, more sales, whatever your metric is that you're looking for. So this is kind of how we go about building our account list. We'll simply look at our clients. We'll ask them for their best case studies. So the kind of clients that they've had the most success with, we'll take that URL, we'll put it into the lookalike search, and then we'll be able to build an account list of everyone that is similar to them. And so very, very easy process there. And
to just add on that as well, Nick, I think some of the great power behind just reverting back to the industry tags and everything is in Ocean, you have multiple tags. So if it's like, oh, they're a marketing agency, but they also do cold emailing or lead generation, they also get flagged up. So you can find other areas and delve into those niches as well. Like you're finding that one of your companies you found are really strong cold emailing, and then you go through and you find a bunch of lookalike companies who specialize in cold emailing. So you can even narrow down further, but also expand. And we also have this exclude feature. So you're wanting to contacting TikTok agencies and you want to have that really personalized outreach, but then you're finding that also some LinkedIn specialists are getting in there. You can exclude those out, so you're getting a really pure industry oversight and understanding of who you're targeting, which is pretty powerful.
Yep, 100%. Sweet.
On to the next.
Sweet. So now let's kind of talk about the second portion of it, which is actually sourcing the contacts. And so this part is pretty interesting because like what I've found is that, okay, like if I get 100 perfect ideal accounts, it's going to be pretty hard to find the contacts of those accounts that are the decision makers that I want. If I just simply use one database, right? So if I just put it into, like I could use Ocean and probably get, half of the contacts, right? Which is common. And then I need to go to other databases to basically find the other decision makers that Ocean was able to find. So I might put it through Apollo, I might put it through ZoomInfo, I might go into Sales Navigator, I might even go in and simply use email permutations, which is something that I'll talk about in the next slide. But basically, what you want to do is take those list of URLs and then you want to insert them into a contact sourcing tool. And there is no one great contact sourcing tool. You really have to kind of play with it depending on the industry that you're using, and just kind of like go in and out a lot of these tools to find the rest of the contacts. And you want to make sure that you segment and identify who is the proper decision maker. And this is where I see a lot of people mess up. And it's hard to do unless you've done and been in B2B sales for a very long time. If you don't have like proper like B2B sales knowledge, and you don't have a great understanding of your market, what I do recommend is actually using GPT. So like a prompt that we've been using recently within our agency, when one of our clients come in and they don't have a clear understanding of who they need to be targeting at some of these large organizations, is simply asking GPT, like, who should we be selling to? So this is a prompt we use. We simply say, I'm building a lead list, having a hard time identifying the best decision makers to sell. My product does, and we kind of explain what the product does. We talk about some of the benefits the product has, and then we simply just say, please find me the best decision makers and list their job titles. And what it will do is pump out, 10 to 15 job titles that are pretty specific and probably pretty relevant to what you're selling. And the more details that you give it, the better it does. But this is a great way to identify like the proper people that you should be targeting at these companies. But just for like a general gist, like the smaller the company, the more senior you want to go, bigger the company, the less senior you want to be. That's just what I've seen works. Like, we'll have clients that come in that sell like, let's say TikTok ad services, and they'll be like, hey, I want to work with the Fortune 500. And we're like, okay, great. Who should we go with, like, target first? And they'll be like, oh, I want to hit the CEO. And we're like, Tim Cook's not really talking about TikTok ads. That's not how it works. And so, the bigger the company, the less senior you want to be. The smaller the company, the more senior you want, because, you don't want to waste your time speaking to someone that just doesn't have a budget or doesn't have, buying power, right? And so,
or any interest.
Yeah, that as well. And so that's kind of how we go about like contact sourcing. And I'll kind of get a little bit more specific into some of the things I was talking about. So kind of like what I mentioned, no singular tool will get you 100% enrichment. So like what you want to do is build out your base. And so what that really means is that you want to try to find, and what enrichment basically is just like trying to identify the proper people and getting their emails all the way through. And like what I like to do is, like, all we've done is use the APIs of all these different data tools, and we've built a really easy flow that basically, it'll take all the accounts and the job titles and whatever descriptions that we, filters that we apply, and put them into Apollo. It'll try to find, let's say 40% of the contacts, and it'll take the other 60%, put them through other data sources like Job Contact, and any other data source that we have on the back end. And this is pretty important to do when your TAM is small, because if your TAM is small, you really do need to like do the data due diligence to go find more like of your contacts. And if you're a lead gen agency, I would recommend it as well, just because you'll get a higher percent enrichment, and it just kind of automates the entire flow. But that's the best way to go about it. Just automate it through the API. Just string up a whole bunch of the APIs and have a simple flow. You could pay someone for you very, very cheap, nothing too crazy. You just need to have licenses on all these different data platforms. So that's the one thing I would say. And then, there are going to be some accounts that, aren't able to have emails of the contacts that you're looking for. So the next thing that you want to do is use permutations. This is sometimes hit or miss. It just kind of depends, but it's worth it, specifically if your TAM is small. So all you have to do is just like find the account on Sales Navigator, and then find the actual person that you're looking for. So let's say, for example, like you find our company LinkedIn page and you say, hey, Nick is the person I need to reach out to, right? So now you have my first name and then you have my last name. Just type in email permutation on Google, and then you're going to find this thing called Metric Sparrow, or like there's tons of them. And they're just going to create 40 different variations of what my email possibly could be. And then you could use a simple validation tool to validate which one is the correct email. So this is something that we'll do here and there. It's like, we'll get the first name, the last name, and then the company URL, and then we'll just use like 40 different permutations to create a whole bunch of different variations, and then we'll just toss them all into Million Verify to validate which one is the correct email. And so if you kind of think about it, like that's the ideal way to go about building your contact list overall. Like you start off with, identifying your accounts, get the proper job titles, segment your list accordingly, and push them into a whole bunch of different data sources until you end up with accounts that you don't have the proper person for, and then you simply try to do permutations, and then now you should have a pretty good enrichment rate overall. So that's kind of how we go about contact sourcing. We just use a whole bunch of different data sources and push the data through, and then run permutations if needed.
Just want to say as well, guys, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask me and Nick. We're happy to answer them, any of them, either in the public chat or the private chat. But yeah.
Sweet. And then whenever you get data, specifically for emails, this is one big piece. So, you'll get your emails from Apollo or Ocean or wherever it needs to be, right? Whatever the data vendor is. And they'll typically have a couple of verification steps that they'll have, because emails do get bad, specifically in times like today where there is a lot of job turnovers. Like email data does go bad pretty often. And so like typically the classification that most databases will give you of the emails is valid, invalid, and then accept all, risky, or catch-alls. And so feel free to email the valids after you validate them using a third-party tool. But the invalids, obviously don't email them. They're going to ruin your deliverability. They're going to tank you. Definitely not a good thing to do. And you want to kind of get them out of your lead list. But then the accept alls. So those are basically emails that can't be validated through an SMTP validation tool. Their domains are just like catch-alls and configured as catch-all domains. Basically, they just receive an email regardless if there's a receiver or not. And the issue here, though, is that like 60% of catch-alls and accept-all emails do bounce. And so, it's sometimes not worth it to email it unless you validate it using something like Scrubby. That's the only tool in the market that could validate a catch-all email. And so that's probably something you might want to do if you're in a space where your TAM is small, once again, right? But like you do want to make sure that you only email the valid emails, and then take a chance with the catch-alls if you put them through something like Scrubby. But if you don't validate them through Scrubby, I probably wouldn't recommend it, because like let's say 40% of your list is catch-alls, which is pretty common. If you just go ahead and email those without doing a second level of verification, and let's say 60% of those 40% bounce, like you have a very good shot of just completely tanking your deliverability. So it's not really worth it to do it unless you take that extra step. So that's kind of how I would go about the actual emailing process whenever you get your list built out. And then just to kind of wrap up really quickly. So, we've kind of talked about, how to build your account list, how to build your contact list, and like the process that you should kind of bake in when kind of going about it. The last piece is just deliverability, right? So like if you have your data 100% accurate, right? You have all your decision makers, you have everything set, you're ready to launch the cannons and have everything going. If your deliverability is not good, it doesn't matter how great the data is, your emails are still going to go to their spam folder. It may not even get delivered at all, and they're just not going to see it, right? And so before you launch your campaign and while you're launching your campaign, there's a couple of like things I would quickly look at. So the first thing is making sure your DNS records are set up properly. So super easy to identify if it's not, and very easy to Google and figure out how to add them in. So I recommend using like NX Toolbox and just literally putting in your domain, and it'll tell you which records you're using, if any. And then in today's time, there's so many different platforms out there, like the legacy tech, which is what I like to call like tools like SalesLoft, for example. They're just a little bit older, right? There's new platforms out there that allow you to scale through the inboxes. So like SmartLeads is a great example. And so you want to keep your inbox volume under 50 emails per day. There's people that do a lot more per email or per inbox, and that just completely takes their deliverability. In today's time, spam filters are much, much, much more hard. And so if you keep your email volume under 50 emails per day, you have a much higher chance of landing in the inbox. And you also want to make sure that you have your warm-up email on, right? So make sure that, if you're using a platform like SmartLead, you have warm-up emails that basically help balance out the cold emails and kind of build engagement with your inbox. And then with the email copy, kind of contrary to most people's belief, you do want to remove any kind of links. You do want to take out the bulky signatures that have, like a Calendly link attached to it. It might have a picture of you and, a whole bunch of company information. You want to take those out, specifically when you're doing cold emails. If you're doing like low volume cold emails, and like a lot of this might not matter too much, but if you're doing like, pretty automated, sophisticated outbound campaigns, like you do want to make your email copy just be plain text, no links, have a lot of syntax in there, and make sure that your signature is just, once again, just plain text. And then the last two things that you want to kind of touch on, or I want to touch on, is basically just like when you run your campaign, if your bounce rate jumps anything above like really 2 to 3%, you want to turn it off and use some kind of like external validation tool to validate those emails. Because if your bounce rate jumps above 4%, you're basically telling Google, you're telling Microsoft, hey, I don't know the person at the end of this receiver, right? And that's why the emails are bouncing. And they just kind of know that it's a cold email that's going out. And then you also just want to turn off open tracking. Open tracking is not that relevant anymore. I would just keep it off. I've seen better inbox placement when I do so. And if you've done all of these kind of things, you should, for the most part, have pretty good deliverability. And the last thing to do is identify if your emails are landing in spam, and just identify where your emails are landing, is to use inbox placement tests. So there's this tool called Mail Monitor. And what Mail Monitor allows you to do is basically send an email to a whole bunch of their seed accounts, and they're just monitoring where your email goes. And so you're able to identify if your emails are landing in the spam of their seed accounts or if they're going to the primary inbox. And this is by far the best indication of email deliverability. It's not open rate. It's simply seeing where your emails land in like a real life inbox placement test. So that's kind of the quick little spiel of deliverability. If you get all of, there's obviously a lot of tiny other nuances that I didn't cover, and probably take a whole day to cover if I did. But this is a quick gist of it. And if you can kind of get these things under wraps, you should be fine on the deliverability standpoint. So yeah, that's basically everything on how to build your account list. And if you guys have any questions, more than happy to answer.
Looks like you answered them all.
I might have. Cool. I see Chris is in here. Chris is a good friend. He runs Hyperspec.
What's up?
Sweet. If you guys don't have any questions, is there anything that you want to speak on, Eliza?
No.
Creating a list for all your local businesses. Great question. So Ocean's a great place to be for it. Austin, any kind of local business that will probably build a list of similar local businesses. Another way to kind of go about it is using Google Maps. So we've had a lot of success building like local business lead lists using Google Maps, and like there's a Google Maps tool out there to pull data from called Outscraper, and you can simply put in the keywords for like your Google Maps search. So like if, let's say, I wanted to find all the bars in the US, I could pull it out of Google Maps using Outscraper. So that's kind of how I would go about building a list of smaller local businesses, and kind of same process, right? Like you get your list from Google Maps, it gets you all the websites, you put all those websites into Apollo or any other database, and then you start filtering for decision makers. So yeah, that's kind of how I go about that.
Another way for you, Richard, is in Ocean, there's a capability to look at the map area that you're interested in. So if it's a small little area, and it will show you all the data that we have in that area and the lookalikes for the local businesses. So if you're just focused on one county, one state, or anything, you can go down to 3 kilometers of an address and see what's in that area. So that's also a really good way of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And then Kyle answered, for a small TAM in West Michigan, best practices for building lists for marketing agency lead list building. So Kyle, quick question to you. So are you trying to build a list of marketing agencies in West Michigan, or are you a marketing agency?
Yeah.
If you can clear that up. So you guys are one. Okay, so great question, Kyle. So you have to identify like who is your ideal like target, right? Like, do you want to go after local businesses? Do you want to go after, let's say, like VC-backed SaaS companies? Like it kind of depends on like what you want to go after, right? But if you want to go local to start, I would kind of do what we just kind of spoke about with Google Maps, or use Ocean to identify accounts in West Michigan using their features. And so, yeah, tons of ways to go about it. You know, we work with a lot of agencies, and what services do you sell specifically? I can kind of give you some good angles and copy tricks that we have for done for you marketing. So do you do like SEO, or do you do like the full service? Full service. Okay, sweet. So one thing I would recommend is kind of like diving deep on one specific thing. And the reason why is like if I came to you, Colin, and I said, hey, I can market your company and grow you in a cold email, or even in a cold call, like it's kind of hard to stand out, right? But if I said, hey, Colin, I can send cold emails for you and generate you leads for $100 a piece. Would you be interested in speaking? Right? It gets much more tailored with what you're saying and what you're pitching, and it's kind of easier to build an offer around it, right? Because marketing is not an offer, right? I can get you onto the rank into the first 3 pages of Google. That's kind of like an offer, right? And so I would choose a specific service within full marketing to kind of like niche down in, and then I would run your entire campaign around that. So one thing we actually been playing with a lot is using ChatGPT on our lead list to build like super specific campaigns. So there's this add-on called Cargo, and basically what it does is it allows you to write like your own prompts and add it to your lead list. So imagine you have a lead list, right? I could basically tell ChatGPT to basically analyze the company domain and find 2 to 3 keywords that are relevant for them to rank on, and then find a competitor, right? And then you can kind of get all that added into a Google Sheet. And I could literally run a campaign that says, hey, first name, I saw that your competitor, and then name drop their competitor, is ranking for, and then put the keywords that ChatGPT said is relevant for them to rank on. I'd love to break down how we could help you outrank them and generate more traffic. Would you be interested in speaking? Like that right there is like a super relevant, super specific email campaign that's just going to convert. So there's a whole bunch of ways to go at it whenever you are able to do full service marketing. Yeah, that's kind of like how I go about it on that end. Sweet. And then T8 said, any advice for building B2B lead lists? So yeah, I mean
B2G.
or B2G.
Business to
I don't know.
government.
Oh, business to government. I was like,
Is it business to government? TH, can you please clarify what that was? But I think it is business to government.
Is it?
Yeah, business to government.
Oh,
I
business
have
to
no
government.
idea.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what B2G is. Okay, well, that's great to know. I learned something new today. So government, so you can actually use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We're working with this one compliance SaaS company, and we built their list off of Sales Navigator, and it actually worked really well because they actually do pretty well on the government list building side. So yeah, just get Sales Navigator and play around with it and build out the filters that you want, and you should be able to. State, local education department. Yeah, you could get that very easily using Sales Navigator. If you want to build your account list inside of Ocean, that's another thing that would probably help. But yeah, both are pretty easy and solid ways to kind of go about it.
Okay.
Sweet. All right. Any other questions for anybody else in here? Sweet, Kyle. Thank you for the love. Appreciate that.
Yeah, glad you liked it. Okay. Well, hope you all have a lovely day. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And thanks, Nick.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Reach out to us if you guys have any questions on lead list building. Bye.
Yeah.